Well, good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. And we're really happy to share our journey, what we have been doing at Gentoo. So what we're going to cover today. So I think you were going to do my slides for me. So on the first slide, we just clarify what we're going to talk about in terms of that journey. And I think it has been quite a short journey. So just to say, I've been at Gentoo nearly a year. And Michael, who's going to share the presentation in a bit, has been there just about 6 months. So this is our journey in that short snapshot of time. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, as I'm sure it has been for many of us. So we're going to share our journey. We're going to share how we feel we've started to move that insight and learning to action. And I'm a massive advocate that things in Gentoo shouldn't be a talking shop. I think sometimes in organisations, there's lots of discussion about what's going to happen. But Michael and I have really tried to work with our operational colleagues and turn that listening and insight into action so that we can really try to move the dial on how we work with complaints in Gentoo. And the other strand of work we're going to share with you is what we've been doing on skills development. Because as we all know, complaints isn't just about a policy and a process. It's about real people, it's about our colleagues and our customers and the skills that they use to work with our customers. So that's what we are going to share with you today. So before we get into some of the insight, I just wanted to share with you a little bit more about Gentoo, because I think the context and the culture in terms of complaint handling is really useful to understand. So on our next slide, I've just got a little insight about our corporate strategy. And I've worked in a couple of housing associations, and I'm sure these are very similar to the outcomes of your corporate strategy. They're all around our communities being safe, our colleagues and our customers. We are a Sunderland-based housing association, so we're on the northeast, and we are Sunderland's largest housing provider. And you can see there our values. We're very proud of our values. They were shaped and designed by colleagues. And I think it's really important that values aren't just things that are stuck on mugs or on posters, that people really live them. And throughout what I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to bring our values to life because we feel they've really helped us to turn that insight into action for complaints. So moving on, the next piece just gives a little more flavour again into Gentoo and an insight into our priorities. These are embedded into our corporate strategy. And hopefully you'll see there's a read across there to the transparency, openness and accountability standards and the consumer standards. So we feel they're really embedded. And I think it's really key to embed our regulatory needs with our values, with our priorities, so that people can see there's that golden thread. Because I think quite often, particularly when you're dealing with change and trying to implement a different approach to complaints or anything, if people can't see how it fits and why you're doing it, it becomes another thing and something in isolation. So we've tried wherever we've done to align our complaints work with our strategy, with our priorities and with our TSMs. So I guess it all makes sense to people why we're doing it and why there is a focus. So they are our 6 priorities and very, very key in how we work with them. And then moving on, just a little flavour of Gentoo. So I've mentioned the values. And I think one of the things you might all remember, there was a piece of work that the Ombudsman developed a few months ago saying that if you don't have a great culture and if you don't focus on culture, you know, complaint handling probably hasn't got a starter for 10 in terms of moving the dial and enhancing it. And we've done a lot of work on culture in Gentoo, not only about complaint handling, but about these values, how we need to work with each other and how we need to work with our customers. And we've also embedded our values into our goals that everyone has. So in Gentoo, this year, we launched a programme called Brilliant Conversations. Brilliant Conversations are all about those conversations between the line manager and their teams and making them brilliant. So it's not a conversation that the manager tells you what to do. It's not a conversation where most of the time the manager's talking and you listen. It's very much a two-way conversation. And what we've also done is embed the suggested goal, and I guess enhanced it a bit more than the Ombudsman suggested, that people all have a complaint handling related goal, whether they are frontline colleagues or whether they are in our support services, because we're a firm believer everyone is here to really support our customers. So that's a bit about how culture is so important in our values. Then the next slide that we sneakily snuck on there was just a bit about our stats. So we've got just over 28,000 homes. We serve 60,000 customers. As I've said, we're Sunderland based. We're spending about £1 million a week investing in existing properties. That was one of our corporate goals that our board endorsed for the next few years, to really focus on our existing properties. And I know that you all know there's a massive read across there to our TSMs and complaint handling, because a lot of complaints do come from repairs and properties. No surprise there. And stock condition data, we're very proud of our stock condition data. And we think that really helps us to enhance how we work on complaints and understand the property, especially if the complaints are around repairs or any of our programmes. Moving on from that one, I think we're going to share the slides, so you'll be able to reflect on some of this data. So just another, what we do to support. You can see there, we manage annually about just over 430,000 calls a year. One thing that we do heavily focus on is having a crisis fund for customers. So that is an amount of money that we put aside to continually focus on how we can support customers. So we have about £500,000 every year, where if customers are in real difficulty, we will supplement and support. And we have a Money Matters team, as I know many of colleagues on the call will do as well, that really focuses on enhancing how customers can maximise their benefits, how they can get wellbeing advice, etc., etc. So I guess as well as, you know, that support as a housing function, we're very much around support and almost that social care for our customers as well, although we don't do supported living. So that is a snapshot about ourselves. And as I say, this is very much a journey, given the time that Michael and I have been here. But one thing that I did realise very quickly in my journey, I needed an excellent customer voice manager with the skills who can really help drive this. Hence, I was delighted when I was able to recruit Michael, because he's done so much in the organisation. So I think, Michael, on the next slide, you're going to take us through the start of our journey and some elements of that.
Thank you, Susan. As Susan said, I've been with Gentoo now for just over 6 months, and we've done a lot over that period of time, which we'll share with you this morning. So I want to take us back to the start of that journey and to the end of 2023. We knew from a complaints handling perspective that we were compliant, but we also knew there was areas of improvement that we could make within the team, but to benefit the customer. We had quite a reactive culture towards the end of 2023. And we had a lot of silo working and silo learning. Insight didn't seem to leave the customer voice team to deliver those service improvements that you would generally expect. And there was a lot of accountability put onto the customer voice team. If it's a complaint, well, it sits with them. So we've been on a big journey, a cultural shift and an educational journey during Q1 and through into Q2 to change the perception on complaints with colleagues across the business and to deliver better outcomes for our customers. Can we switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. So you'll see there in Q1, we did an awful lot to take that leap forward and do some transformational change. We delivered some new complaints handling training for the team and the wider business. So all front-facing colleagues received complaints training. And a lot of that was around how to have a really caring and quality conversation with the customer. We introduced some new complaints reporting. So we did have complaints reporting in the last financial year, but it wasn't as robust as we would have liked it to have been. So we introduced some new complaints reporting for the start of this financial year. And as part of that, we introduced a new complaints tracker. I'm sure all of you working in this social housing sector, sometimes it's difficult with CRM systems to have all of your customer information all in one place. So we have a really robust complaints tracker that manages all of our data when it comes to complaints, but also it's automated, so we can highlight when we're coming up to close to the 5 days for an acknowledgement letter, or if we're getting close towards that 10-day turnaround time for a response letter for stage 1 or 20 days for stage 2. One of the key things that we delivered in Q1 was around a deep dive on complaints. We established a customer committee back in November last year. They meet 6 times a year. And as part of that and our involved customers, we run regular quarterly deep dive sessions. And we did a really strong piece around deep dive on complaints earlier this year in Q1, where we had 3 sessions. And at the final session, we were observed by the regulator of social housing as part of our regulatory inspection, where customers were honest. They gave us some really good feedback, and we went through the letters that we use for tone of voice. We went through the complaints process, the compensation policy, and to ensure that we could enhance what we had to deliver a better outcome for our customer in a way that they would expect. We also published our first annual complaints and service improvement plan earlier this year, and we're working through. In fact, we've cut through most of the actions on our plan, which was quite detailed and is available on the Gentoo website. We've been able to do that by working more collaboratively with business areas across Gentoo. There's a lot more curiosity now to probably where there was this time last year when it comes to getting it right for the customer. And you'll see more of that as we talk about culture a bit later on. One of the things that we did identify was that we needed a couple of new roles within the customer voice team. One was a customer complaints lead to focus primarily on complaints. And the other was a customer insight advisor. So we do engagement really well at Gentoo, but we needed to take that insight to be able to take it into action. So we needed somebody to come in and hold that role and deliver some, create some Power BI and deliver some really first-class reporting with heat maps and where we could triangulate all of that insight that we've got to learn from complaints, what our TSMs are telling us, and our engagement work, so we can put improvement plans in place to drive the business forward. And as part of that, you've got to have a really strong governance framework. So we created one for our complaints team, our customer voice team, where it involves robust quality checking, everything from that first customer interaction right the way through. And that governance framework has been signed off by our customers. It's been scrutinised by our customer committee, and it's been live since Q1, which is great. Towards the end of Q1, we had an external audit carried out on the complaints team, and I'm pleased to say that was a positive outcome for us. There was some learning in there, which is great, and we've taken that and we've included that within our service improvement plan. And as part of all of that work, I've touched on there before, about greater collaboration and learning and working and reducing that silo. So one of the things the complaints team told me when I joined Gentoo was that they keep highlighting things and areas of improvement across the business, but nothing really seemed to happen. We've been able to pull all of that data together now in one place through having that customer insight advisor role. And we've got the Power BI, which tells that one version of the truth. And that allows us to break down those silos to create that collaborative approach to learning and working together. We've launched a new self-serve complaints MI suite for our senior leadership team, so that our exec team and senior leaders can, whenever they choose, click onto the link and see in real time what's happening with complaints. So that gives us greater transparency as a customer voice team. We're working on developing an engagement strategy and refreshing what we've got, and we're doing that with TPAS and our customers. everything we do with Gentoo involves our customers and our customer committee and our board, and it's important for us that we listen to what our customers are telling us on what will work for them and how we can incorporate that into what we do as a business. During Q2, we changed a little bit of our engagement model. We have quarterly customer involvement sessions, and we have quarterly customer voice meetings that are chaired by customers. But we wanted to bring something new into the mix, and we're conscious that we have customers who maybe seldom heard or who are more vulnerable. We want to reach out to them. So we rolled out customer drop-ins where we've set ourselves up in community centres, in cafes, within our communities during the day and of an evening to reach out to those customers who maybe don't get in touch with us in the traditional way through telephone or website or social media. And they've been really successful. We took some customers along with us to scrutinise the work that we were doing, and that was fed back as part of that deep dive session with the regulator of social housing. To take that one step further with the customer voice team, it was clear that from a training and development perspective, historically, there wasn't probably a great deal of that. We've spent a lot of time during Q1 and Q2 training and developing the customer voice team so they're equipped with the skills that they need in order to deliver and get it right for the customer. And that journey is ongoing. So we've rolled out complaints handling training. We've rolled out customer experience training. We're developing and rolling out in December a specific customer complaints module for the customer voice team, because we feel that we've got to get it right, and we need to invest in our people in order to be able to do that. We've revised our complaints and compensation policy with our customers throughout Q1 and Q2, and they're now live. And we've also embedded brilliant conversations. So I don't know what it's like in your organisations, whether you have regular one-to-ones with your colleagues. We've introduced brilliant conversations. Brilliant conversations happen quarterly at the moment here at Gentoo, and it's an opportunity for colleagues to talk through how they're feeling, where they're at. There's a little bit of KPIs in there as well, but it's all about the colleague and focused on the colleague, their goals, and what they need and what support we can give them to make them the best that they can be with their role. And they've landed really, really well. And it's an opportunity to get you to know your colleagues more outside of the business. So we know process, we know KPIs and all of that. But if you work it really well, there's an opportunity to support in a stronger and a greater way with what's going on with that colleague. We've also embedded and we're evolving our customer engagement model. So we've recently reached out to TPAS over the last month or so, and we're working with TPAS in order to evolve what our new engagement model could look like for the new financial year. And I know Susan will come onto that in a little while. And as part of that, all of that piece and all of that triangulation, we've got our insight to action reporting, which goes out at SLT level so that they own it within their business areas, and they can see exactly what's going on and what improvements are necessary in order to raise the bar and take us from good to great to deliver better outcomes for our customers. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Here's the bit you've probably all been waiting for. Here's the complaints stats for Q1 and Q2. Q1s are in grey on the right-hand side of each column. And I'll just touch on a little bit of Q1 there while we're here. So in Q1, we had 357 service requests. At that time, at Gentoo, we called them Own It, Fix It. We've reverted to the terminology set out by the Ombudsman with service request. We had 87 stage 1 complaints in Q1. And in Q1, we had 35 stage 2 complaints. And I suppose it's nearly half. So nearly half of all stage 1 complaints are moving towards stage 2. In Q2, you can see there's been a dramatic shift through the training, through embedding the learning, through the brilliant conversations and investing in the colleagues. We're now delivering a better conversation and a better outcome at stage 1. So in Q2, we've had an increase in stage 1 complaints to 101. you'll see the difference in the reduction of stage 2 complaints for Q2 is only 26, so just a quarter, which is a significant decrease. And that demonstrates to us through the insight that we've got and the conversations, the better quality conversations we're having with the customer. It shows that we're learning, we're listening, and we're getting it right. You'll see MP council inquiries have gone up slightly. We've had one more Housing Ombudsman determination in Q2, as opposed to Q1, and you'll see there we've given out £1,000 more in compensation in Q2. Looking back, I don't think we've always probably got it right when it comes to compensation, but now we've got that new compensation policy in place, and guidelines for colleagues, not only within the team but across the business. Then it shows that, for me, that's not a negative. That shows that we're actually compensating in the right way, and recognising the faults and things that have gone wrong that have caused the customer to complain. And you'll see that TSMs, that is creeping up slightly. So Q1 we finished on 29. Q2 we've gone up to 30. There's a lot of work to do there, and we're doing a lot of work with the rest of the business around tenant satisfaction measures, and around educating and understanding their impact and influence on those scores. So although from a customer voice team we report on tenant satisfaction measures, you'll know that they're a reflection of what's happening across the business. And it's great that we've got a really good, strong SLT team and senior leaders who are on board and are curious and want to know more about what they can do to support improving the business to drive those scores up. The key themes that we've identified in complaints in Q2, nearly half of all complaints followed on from Q1, where we had a lack of resolution with repairs and roofing timescales. Damp and mould, again, was still present. And there was poor communication followed by the repairs timescales. Now, taking that learning and taking it into action, Gentoo have recruited a new role that sits in repairs and maintenance, who works directly with customers from a repairs perspective. And so on the back of it, say, complaints, you close it where there's follow-on work still required. There's colleagues now within our repairs and maintenance function who will own that follow-on work and make sure that it's delivered for the customer within the timescales that we've agreed as part of the resolution from that stage 1 or stage 2 complaint. And that goes for the service requests too. So we audit and monitor the service requests that come in. And if there's follow-on works or anything required on the back of service requests, they're also monitored right through to completion. So we're improving the service offer, and we're making sure that our actions meet our words. And that's a strong journey that we're on. And there's still a lot of work to do, but we're going in the right direction, which is great. Can we have the next slide, please? So tenant satisfaction measures for Q2. I've already mentioned the complaints one at 30. Overall satisfaction's gone up from 69 in Q1 to 76 in Q2, which is great to see. In fact, all of those scores are on an upward trajectory for Q2. And that's testament to the work and the effort that's been put in, and a lot of the initiatives that's happened during Q2 here at Gentoo, which we'll come on to in a moment. But we all know TSMs is like trying to turn an oil tanker. What we do now, we may not see the impact in the scores until a few months down the line. But it's great to see that we are heading in the right direction. And as part of our customer committee, Susan and myself are scrutinised on a couple of months basis on where we are when it comes to complaints and tenant satisfaction measures, and quite rightly so, because customers are at the heart of everything that we do, and that's why we're here. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay. Now, what underpins everything that we do is our governance. So one of the things that we quickly identified was we wanted to tighten up on our governance and make ourselves a lot more transparent as an organisation. And we've done that through our quality assurance framework that our customer complaints lead manages with the team. Our customer insight advisors developed our complaints Power BI reporting, so at a senior level and right through the business, colleagues can click on the link and have a look to see how we're doing as an organisation. We've got our quarterly reporting into customer committee, which I've just touched on there. And as part of that, we do the same with our exec team. So our exec team are fully aware of where we are when it comes to complaints, customer insight, customer engagement, and where we are with our tenant satisfaction measures. And we've also got a member responsible for complaints who, Morgan's fantastic. She was appointed earlier in the year, and we meet regularly with our member responsible, and Morgan will be spending more time with the team over the coming months as we continue to develop and grow that relationship. And then we've got our complaints deep dive reviews, something we do regularly. Our last one in Q1 was with the regulator, and we've got some more coming up around our letters and again, tone of voice. And this is something that keeps us at the heart of what our customers are telling us. It's important managing complaints that you don't get bogged down and you keep the customer at the heart of what you're doing. And the only way you're going to improve is to learn from what our customers are telling us. Next slide, please. So I touched on there about some of the great initiatives that have taken place, particularly over Q2. And one of the big initiatives we've led is around Move the Dial in 90 days. So our goals for 2024 was to enhance the customer experience and to improve the repair service offer, which for us is high involvement, high collaboration model that empowers colleagues. So way back, it must be about 110 days now, invitations went out to over 90 colleagues across Gentoo. Those 90 colleagues who probably have never worked together in a collaborative way previously, or some of them didn't even know each other. We've got them in a room together as a group. We came up with 7 projects that would improve the customer experience and the repairs processes. Those 7 projects, those 90 colleagues were then asked to choose which project they would like to work on. And 90 days later, that has been a lot of transformational change, which has been fantastic. And we've delivered some really good outcomes. Some of the results are to have a knowledge hub. So in our contact center environments, they have lots of knowledge and great information, but it's not all in one place. So we've launched a knowledge hub. We've got Uber repairs. We've invested in a drone, and the colleagues now got a pilot license. So rather than putting up scaffolding to check out what's happening with the roof, we can send a drone up really quickly. This is what our customers told us that they would like. And we're in the early days of embedding the work that we've delivered on the back of 90 days. But it doesn't stop there. We've developed a learning together mindset, which is fantastic. And it's all about that listen, that learn to care and to act. And the journey that we've been on with Move the Dial in 90 days over the last few months has kind of like set the benchmark for where we're heading as an organisation when it comes to delivering business change in an agile way. Next slide, please. Thank you. Susan, over to you.
Thank you. I think the other thing I just wanted to say about Move the Dial before we move on is, again, it links to that cultural change. And I think the importance of senior leadership. So senior leadership has been throughout the whole journey with complaints, Move the Dial. And I think without, our senior leaders role modelling the behaviours and the expectations and the importance about complaints, sometimes that's challenging for frontline colleagues. So senior leadership behaviours and our SLT have been absolutely instrumental in making sure we have this Move the Dial shift in complaint handling and our broader ways of working. And I guess that's also been endorsed by the customer excellence model you see now. So this care model underpinned all of the complaints handling training that we designed, and we worked with an external partner. So all of our frontline colleagues have now attended the customer complaint handling training that was aligned to the care model. And we also tailored it to different scenarios. So if you worked in repairs, these are the types of complaints you deal with. And getting colleagues to realise that if you don't have the elements of care, particularly empathy, which again, I think you've all seen in the spotlight reports from the Ombudsman, empathy is a big trait that we talk about. So if you don't emulate these behaviours, that can sometimes drive complaints. And I don't know about you, but it really gets my goat, shall I say, when we get complaints from customers if it's about behaviour. Because behaviour, we are all in control of our behaviour. We might not be all in control of a roofing repair and the timeliness of that, but we are all in control of how we handle complaints and of how we work with our customers. So for me, this is absolutely fundamental. So we built the repairs, complaints handling training rather, on the care model. We finished that module and we're now on to module 2, which is about customer excellence. So everyone in the organisation is now going through that. But to come back to the point about leaders, we're also going to have in early January, when all of the training's finished, a session for our heads of and our SLT, which is all talking about leading customer excellence in complaints and service. Because I want to have a bit of a deeper dialogue with our leaders to say, all your teams have gone through this learning. The feedback's been great. We've given additional resources in terms of keeping the skills alive content, so people can use that in team meetings and use the BI that Michael's mentioned, so that it's constantly there. So it's all about, keeping that alive, but getting senior leaders to take ownership. So I'm looking forward to that conversation in January to say, how are you going to lead this? How are you going to embed it? And how can we support you? Because it isn't just, attend a training session, hopefully get a nice warm feeling and leave not changing. This is about culture, but also behavioural shift. And that's what we feel will hopefully get us above that 30, particularly for complaint handling. And then the next piece, Michael's mentioned on the next slide, is about our engagement model. So we had the regulator attend our exec team meeting in January, and she talked very much about the best organisations will realise that complaints, TSMs, insight from engagement all need to be pulled together and triangulated. So we are reviewing our model with TPAS, who I did a lot of work with actually when I worked in Home Group before I joined Gentoo. We currently feel we're between progressive and mature, but how we engage, what we engage on, we really feel are key, that they're linked to complaints learning and TSM insight. So that for us will also help us really move forward. So moving on to our last piece before we go to questions, and I can see some questions bubbling, which is brilliant. Our last slide is really about what we learned in this year's journey. So the theme is, I guess, moving that insight to action, moving away any talking shops. Key piece for me is culture, and Michael and I have done a lot of work to align this work to our culture programmes and to support the customer voice team that Michael leads. Foundation of good data, processes and governance are key. I think if you're building on sand, it just won't happen. So for us, we had to spend quite a bit of time refreshing and making sure everyone was clear, and then giving the skills and the development to everyone in the customer voice team and across the organisation. I've mentioned triangulating all of that information so that actually we can see the root causes and not just having a reactive approach. So it has been very proactive, but also working with senior leaders. So whilst the customer voice team will take the initiative to do the logging and manage the governance framework and oversee the investigation, we have ensured that there is accountability for managers in the operation and leaders to investigate and take part. So as Michael said earlier, it's not just the complaint happens and it's over the customer voice team to do absolutely everything. We've made this a collaboration and a team effort. And we're also starting to implement for stage 2s a final review by a senior leader who wasn't involved in the complaint as well. So you're not marking your own homework before we sign off for stage 2. And that's also validated by myself as the accountable exec. Customer engagement is key, and we've dialed up and changed how we look at our cultural work, getting colleagues to move the dial and continuous improvement as a culture and do drop-ins. We found a less formal approach now works much, much better for engagement than formal chairs and committees. People just don't want the bureaucracy anymore. So we're trying to bust bureaucracy and how we engage and move the dial. Michael alluded that TSMs, particularly on complaints, do take time. So we feel, a lot of work, particularly in the last 2 quarters. We're hoping in Q3 and Q4, this now starts to make dividends, in particularly that lower TSM, but equally all of them, because we're probably about middle of the pack if I look at the Inside Housing report of last week, where everyone was in TSMs. We also feel it's about empowering colleagues. They have the answers, particularly with complaints and involving them and not having a massive blame culture. I think it's important to see all perspectives in complaint handling. And we do have a C1 rating. So we had our regulatory inspection earlier this year. You can imagine we're massively proud of a C1. It was a really challenging process, as you all know, going through an inspection, and particularly with new standards. And of course, the consumer standards are all about customers, TSMs and complaints. However, whilst we got a C1 rating, we're under no illusion what a C1 rating is in 2024. The standards will continue to rise, and a C1 rating in a few years' time, the bar will have massively raised. So that's our aim, to keep moving with colleagues and customers and make, I guess, some of the negativity around complaints as absolutely positive as it can be. So that is our journey, everyone. Thank you for listening. And I think we are going to have some good questions by the looks of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Susan and Michael. That was brilliant. Loads of really interesting and good stuff going on. And I can see actually lots of questions are coming in the chat now, but it was really good to hear about. I think a lot of the time we're quick to sort of identify lessons with complaints, but actually you've given us so much insight to what you've been doing to sort of do those, put that into action and actually make those lessons turn into lessons learned rather than just lessons identified. And it was really interesting to see those stats as well, to see especially how, you know, from quarter 1 to quarter 2, how those complaints moving to stage 2 have dropped. So, but thank you again for sharing all of that. Loads of really interesting stuff, which you can see because there's lots of questions. So I'll just head to the first one for you. So there's 2 questions here from Claire and from Lisa, and I'll ask them together because they're quite similar. So Claire says, can I ask who investigates and responds to your complaints? Does that role sit within the customer voice team or the service areas? And Lisa says, similarly to Claire, I would love to understand the customer voice team structure, please.
Okay.
That's definitely you, Michael.
Yeah. We have, as part of the customer voice team, we have customer voice partners who investigate stage 1 and stage 2 complaints. And they sit within the customer voice team. A bit more around that structure of the customer voice team. So we've got our customer voice partners who manage complaints. We've got our customer insight advisor. We've got our customer complaints lead who manages the customer voice partners. And we've got a customer engagement lead as well. And by having all of those different types of roles under the banner of customer voice allows us to do some of the transformational work that and the journey that we're on over the last 6-7 months.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. So the next question is from Mark, and Mark says, with the culture and positive values in mind, did you consider the best role name to fit the complaints lead role? I'm a complaints officer and sometimes think this has a negative connotation. I can see there somebody said 100 there as well. So yeah.
Okay, I'll take this one as well if that's all right. I think we're on a journey. We're on a journey from taking us from what was in a stable place to something that's going to be brilliant and great. And as part of that, I would say we're kind of in a bit of transition. So although we've got a customer complaint lead job title, that is for us at the moment to be able to have that job role identifiable across the business as the person to go to who's leading on complaints. So from a customer perspective, they'll engage and work with the customer voice partner. So from that negative connotation around that term complaint, the customer probably won't really see that. They'll have that customer voice partner who's working through that response and that complaint with them to get to the right outcome. But no, I think at this moment in time, it's the right role for us at the right time.
Great, thank you. So Jane is asking, are you noticing complaints are getting more complex?
Good question. Yes. And I think that part of that's to do with the change in nature of society. A lot of what's happened over the last couple of years when it comes to cost of living and how financially challenged people are these days. And I think there's an opportunity to refocus, like we're doing within Gentoo, to invest more in the customer and to work more collaboratively with other business areas and to share that insight in order to deal with some of those complexities, in order to improve the processes and procedures that we've had historically that probably need a refresh to bring them up to date to be able to deliver for the customer.
Brilliant. Thank you. And we've got a question here from Claire, a really good question, actually, because I know record keeping is a challenge in lots of the complaints that we see. So did you have any record keeping challenges to overcome as part of your positive shift in complaint handling? And if so, how did you overcome this?
Yes, we did. And I'd be surprised if there's anyone on this call who hasn't had difficulty when it comes to record keeping. We've got multiple systems at Gentoo, a lot of legacy systems, and we implemented Salesforce probably a couple of years ago now. But to help us tighten up and strengthen our record keeping as part of our development within customer voice. And we have a locked SharePoint site as well, where our track is kept. So from a GDPR perspective, we comply with all of the regulations and everything. But we've got our one source, our one version of the truth within the team, as well as the systems that we use as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So just moving to the next question. So Becky asks, are you taking any proactive actions to try and improve TP09? And if so, could you share what your thoughts and actions are?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all the complaint handling. So all of the training and everything we've mentioned.
Yeah. So we're on a journey. We're delivering training across Gentoo, as well as specific bespoke training for the customer voice team. To help with that score and the other scores that we've got as part of our tenant satisfaction measures. I'd say compared to where we were a year ago, there's a lot more transparency, there's a lot more accountability at every role within Gentoo, and together we're now having those conversations, positive conversations about what we could do in order to improve that score. I've got different business areas coming to me all the time at the minute saying, we've seen the TSMs, we've had them in our team meeting. We're keen to understand how we can influence and help improve the business to change that score. And these are back office functions that are now looking at things more from a customer perspective than probably they've ever done, which is fantastic. So we are taking proactive actions. That's one of our key pieces of work for this financial year and going forward. We're going in the right direction, and it's great that other people within the organisation now understand more about TSMs and how they work, but also that customer feedback. So you've got your score, but it's what you're doing with that customer feedback and sharing that with the business, which is what we've been doing over the last 6 months.
Thank you. That sounds really good. Lisa's asked if you could just add, how many customer voice partners do you have?
I'm terrible at maths, so here goes. So we've got 6 customer voice partners.
6. Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. So Jackie says that she loves your move the dial approach to keep things moving forward quickly as projects and improvement work seem to take so long. How did you change the approach to get this quicker approach and the buy-in across the teams?
Yeah, so this was an opportunity, shall I say, that the chief exec asked me to look at. She had the concept of this year, we want to move the dial on lots of things in Gentoo. So I looked at the concept and joining Gentoo did feel quite a bureaucratic organisation, if I'm honest, from where I've come from. So I was on a mission to use Move the Dial to really change how we do things and bust the bureaucracy. And I am not one for massive organisation processes and policies when I know we've got lots of talent in the organisation who've got brilliant ideas, because that's what the colleagues are doing day in and day out. So we developed the concept over 90 days. And I've done something similar when I worked in the private sector. So thought how we could do that and came up with a concept. I did, if I'm honest, have to influence my other exec peers. Some of them, they were a bit reticent that, you know, this is a lot of time and effort, because I wanted to take people out of the day job for some time and get their ideas on what we could do to move the dial on around customer excellence, complaints and repairs. But anyway, we decided to do it as a pilot, and we organised a massive session in February. We'd had all colleagues come to these sessions, so we ran them over, I think it was 3 weeks, with about 80 colleagues coming to every session. We talked about Move the Dial, and we got every colleague to engage in how could we move the dial on these topic themes. We themed them, and then we asked for volunteers, and we drilled it down to what I called the pilot advance party. So we had about 90 colleagues. We identified 7 mini projects. And when I say a project, the project approach and scope was 1 page and a couple of slides. So it wasn't a paper mountain. So that helped us accelerate. To get our senior leaders engaged in this, the 7 projects each had an SLT sponsor. And then each of the teams worked on these projects with support. And we also ran the session, because I can see some other questions about customer involvement. We also invited customers to that session, but also ran a Move the Dial session with customers, our involved customers. So we had all of their insights as well. So it wasn't just what we thought as colleagues. So we triangulated that, ran the 7 projects over 90 days, which was an interesting journey, because we didn't give people loads of training. You know, we knew we had talented colleagues. We knew they knew the answers with customer insight, how to improve things. So they ran the projects, came up with some great insights. We had check-in sessions, which involved the rest of exec and the chief exec. And then after 90 days, we held a fantastic celebratory event that our customer committee and involved customers came to, board members, where they presented the outputs, but it was all about customer centricity and with the backdrop of TSMs and particularly complaints. And we're going to replicate that approach, so we continue that mindset of continuous improvement. And it's had great focus, because colleagues who weren't involved and perhaps were a bit sceptical are now saying, when can I get involved to do a Move the Dial session? How can I move it? So it's had a really good ripple cultural effect across the organisation on many things. But obviously, our focus initially was complaints and TSMs.
Thank you very much, Susan. So the next question's from Ebony, and I've been trying to find the link for you, Ebony, about the I think you mentioned the Inside Housing report from last week on the 20, I think it was the 21st of October, that
right.
published the TSM results. I'll see if I can get a link to you, Ebony. I've had a look here, but it sort of takes you to a subscribers page. So if you leave that with me, I don't know if you have it, Susan, but if you leave it with me, I can.
I think you've got to be a subscriber to use the link, but it's in last week's, and that gives you sort of a ranking on it. It's really useful for benchmarking. Not that I'm heavily into league tables. I think it is about learning, and I think that's the important part of it. But I found it really useful. Oh, she's got it. Brilliant.
Brilliant. You've got it there. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's good. Glad we've got that one. So Alison, can I ask what the structure of the whole is? Thanks. Not sure, Alison, if you want to come in a bit more and just explain what that one, a bit more about your question there.
Whole team.
Whole team, maybe. Yes, whole team. Yeah. That's
So customer voice team is led by myself. I have 3 direct reports: customer engagement lead, customer insight advisor, and the customer complaint lead. Customer complaint lead then has the 6 customer voice partners reporting into them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So the next question, we already know it's the next question's from Michelle, and I've just mentioned about you've got 6 customer voice partners. But the next part of the question is, how do you use your customers to improve the way you work? What does that engagement look like, and how involved are they in supporting this change journey?
The customers are at the heart of everything that we do when it comes to change. We don't do anything without it being scrutinised by our customers. Our customer voice is heard, and we do that in various ways through our deep dive sessions, through our involved network, and we have an online network for involved customers. You said we did. We've got our drop-in sessions, and of course we've got our customer committee and our chairs meetings, and our drop-ins. So we've got some very formal engagement structures with our customers to the very informal, and that model works really well for us to be able to listen to different voices and get different views in order to help us review and shape the way forward for us at Gentoo.
I think the other thing just to mention, we have got digital channels.
Yeah.
So there is an online portal where we can collate customer feedback, and we do surveys and different sessions with customers. That's one area that we want to explore more, because we know a lot of our younger customers, I think, like more digital channels. So that's a key thing. The one other thing that I'd just like to mention about the customer committee, because it came up in our regulatory inspection, is because, as Michael said, and I know it's a bit cheesy, but customers are at the heart of everything, and everything does go through them, and they're so involved. And then there's that clear line of sight to our board, that the regulator commented on our C1 feedback, that was one of the aspects of why we got awarded the C1, because they could absolutely see the golden thread from our customers, communities, involved customers, customer committee to board, and back down, because it's that feedback loop. So that really helped us to enhance that.
That sounds really good. Thank you very much. We've got time for, I think, a couple more questions. I'll try and get through the last few. So from Jackie, how do you promote your learning out to your customers? Have you noticed, oh, sorry, I've missed one here, actually. Sorry, from Georgina. How are you managing to recruit involved residents as part of your engagement structure?
We do that. I think we do that really well. So we, a lot of customers, word of mouth as well. A lot of our customers will recruit other customers to join us, and we invite customers into our deep dive sessions. So we go out with really strong campaigns to encourage customers, if this is something they'd be interested in, such as, I don't know, a deep dive around void properties, then get in touch with us, come in, be part of that scrutiny, and help us shape what that could look like in the future. So we don't always see the same customers. It's important for us that our customers are representative of the communities that they live in. So we reach out, and we don't just stick with a select number of customers who we know are the regular customers who will want to be involved all the time. It's important that we reach out to our communities and the rest of our customer base.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because one thing that we did earlier this year, the Ombudsman was visiting the North East, and we took the opportunity to have the Ombudsman do a session with our customers. So we communicated that widely, and we got a lot of customers. There was over 100 customers came in. And what was interesting, customers who weren't sort of our involved customers who we knew, and customers actually who had a complaint but hadn't complained came. So that insight was really useful. That told us there are customers, no surprise, I guess. The seldom heard customers might have complaints, but for whatever reason, until the Ombudsman came, didn't think they could complain. So that was a real good insight for us in February to target and work much more on our seldom heard customers in tandem with our housing colleagues. And it just helped us reflect on, have we got the right channels and the right approach?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, we've come to the end, but there are only about 2 or 3 more questions. So Susan and Michael, would you be happy if I send them to you? So then when we, and then perhaps you wouldn't mind answering them. And then when I send out the slides after this session, we could just answer those last, I think it's 2 or 3 questions, but sorry, we haven't quite had enough time to get to them.
Great questions.
It's great questions, and it just shows how interesting and valuable your presentation was today. So thank you both very much for coming along and talking with us and sharing all of that. And thank you to everybody that's come along to the session. An evaluation form in the chat, and if you could please complete that for us, we'd really appreciate your feedback. And just to let you know, if you enjoyed today, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we're running another session with it's about learning from severe maladministration on the 13th of November with Trident. So if anyone would like to book onto that, you could do that through the Learning Hub. But again, a huge thank you to Susan and Michael and to everyone for coming along today. And I'll send you the slides a bit later on with the answers to those final questions, and hope everybody has a lovely rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet everyone. Thanks for your questions. They were great.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.